October 13th, 2019. Springfield Police Department, Missouri. At 5 minutes to midnight, two people approached the duty desk. One was older, looking about 14, maybe 15. The second was quite small, about 5 years old, no more. Sergeant Michael Brennan, 23 years in the police force, would later testify to investigators. He would say, the first thing that struck him was that they were dressed inappropriately for the weather. It was October, the temperature was just above freezing, and it was drizzling rain. The older one wore a thin, gray, sleeveless t-shirt and jeans. The younger one wore summer clothes, shorts, and a t-shirt with some cartoon character. Their sneakers were soaked through, no socks. Neither had a jacket. Second, both looked emaciated. Not just tired, emaciated. Their skin was pale, almost gray. Dark circles under their eyes. The older one held on to the edge of the counter to keep from swaying. His lips were cracked. His hair was dirty and tangled. Brennan initiated standard protocol. He asked their names, where their parents were, where they came from, if they needed medical attention. The older one remained silent. He looked at the floor. His hands trembled, not from the cold, from something else. The younger one cried, quietly, monotonously. His face was buried in the older one's side. He cried as if he had been for a long time. His voice was hoarse, his face red and swollen. The sergeant tried again. He spoke more gently. Listen, I need to know your name so we can call home, so someone can come for you. The older one squeezed the younger one's hand. He lifted his head, looked Brennan in the eyes, spoke for the first time. Daniel Reed. Brennan wrote it down in his notebook, asked him to repeat it, just in case, to ensure he heard correctly. The boy repeated clearly, syllable by syllable, My name is Daniel Reed. The sergeant opened the computer database, section Unsolved Cases, subsection Missing Persons. He typed the name into the search bar, pressed enter. 1 second. 2. A file popped up on the screen. Case status, active. Category, missing person. Registration date, August 24th, 2012. 7 years and almost 2 months ago. Age at disappearance, 7 years old. Brennan looked at the photograph in the file, a school photo. A 7-year-old boy smiling at the camera. Light hair. A mole above his left eyebrow, freckles on his nose. Then he shifted his gaze to the boy in front of him. His hair was darker now, dirty, long, but the mole was in the same place, the same face shape, the same eyes. It was him, Daniel Reed, 7 years listed as missing. Brennan picked up the phone, dialed the internal number for the detective division. He spoke 4 words into it. Active case. Kidnapping. Code red. 2 minutes later, 2 detectives from the juvenile division burst into the duty room. Detective Sarah Miller and Detective James Porter. 5 minutes after that, FBI agent Robert Callahan arrived. He had been working on this case since 2012, personally, because child abduction is a federal crime, because Daniel Reed's parents were still listed as complainants, because this case was on the priority list of unsolved cases. Callahan approached the counter, looked at Daniel, pulled out his phone, opened a photo, the same school photo from 2012, compared them. He recognized him. But then Callahan shifted his gaze to the younger one, and that's when the second protocol began. Detective Miller was already checking the database. She entered an approximate age, a date, the last 3 years, looked at photos of missing children. She found a match. Name,
Ethan Collins. Date of disappearance, February 2nd, 2017, 2.5 years ago. Age at disappearance, 2 years and 8 months. Location, a shopping mall parking lot in Springfield. His mother turned away for 30 seconds to get a bag from the car. When she turned back, he was gone. 2 missing persons, 2 active cases, 7 years difference between disappearances, both standing in the station, alive. Callahan took Daniel to an interrogation room, not the one where suspects were interrogated, a special one, for juvenile witnesses. It had soft chairs, neutral-colored walls, and a discreetly installed camera. Ethan was taken by social worker Linda Graham. She had arrived 10 minutes after the call. She took him to the county hospital for a medical examination. He was too young to give testimony, too frightened. Daniel sat across from the FBI agent. On the table were a dictaphone, a glass of water, a box of tissues. Callahan started the recording, stated the date, time, and names of those present.
And he realized, now he would hear what he had been searching for 7 years. He would find out who had stolen this boy from the city park in August 2012, where he had been kept all this time, why there had been no trace, how he had managed to escape. But most importantly, he would find out if there was anyone else there, because Daniel had somehow brought Ethan with him. And if he knew where to find one, then he might know about others, and if they were there was almost no time left to search. August 24th, 2012, 7 years before that night at the station. Daniel Reed, 7 years old, lives with his parents, Mark and Susan Reed, in a Springfield suburb, a 2-story house on Maple Street, number 247, a quiet neighborhood, manicured lawns, children's bicycles by the entrances. Neighbors knew each other by name. Typical American middle class. Investigators had archived records, family videos the parents had filmed a few months before the disappearance, July 2012. Daniel's birthday, he turned 7. He blows out candles on a Spider-Man cake, smiles at the camera. An ordinary boy, light hair, freckles on his nose, a little shy of the camera.
Asks for a retake, not all the candles went out the first time. His mother, Susan, 42, a librarian, would later give detailed testimony to Agent Callahan. She would say their life was predictable, stable, boring even, to be honest. No surprises, no deviations from the schedule. Daniel attended Lincoln Elementary School, 2 blocks from home. Every morning was the same. Breakfast at 7:30, usually cereal with milk or toast with peanut butter, to school by 8:15. Mark drove him on his way to work. Classes ended at 3 in the afternoon. After school, a strict route, the same one every day. Daniel exited the school gates, turned right onto Oak Street, walked 2 blocks past the grocery store and dry cleaner to the intersection with Maple, turned left there, and after 100 meters, he was home. 10 minutes on foot, sometimes less if he didn't stop to look at something along the way. Susan always met him at the gate with lemonade or cookies. Mark Reed, 45, worked as a middle manager at a Bank of America branch. Standard schedule, 9 in the morning to 6 in the evening. Susan worked at the city library on Main Street, but specifically chose a schedule until 3 in the afternoon so she could meet her son from school. An ordinary family, an ordinary life. No conflicts, no debts, no strange acquaintances. Other home videos showed family dinners at the wooden kitchen table. Daniel talking about an art lesson, laughing when his father joked. Mark helping him with his math homework. Susan reading the Chronicles of Narnia before bed. They had reached the 3rd book. Neighbors would later say the same thing. A quiet family, friendly. Daniel was polite, well-behaved. Sometimes played with others outside, ball or bikes. Nothing unusual, nothing suspicious. There was another record in the police files, the most important one.
from a surveillance camera at Lincoln Elementary School. Date, August 24, 2012. Time, 15:04. The camera was installed above the main entrance, slightly angled. The quality was average, a standard security system installed several years ago, but sufficient to distinguish faces and clothing. Daniel exited the school gates. He was wearing a blue t-shirt and dark blue jeans, a gray backpack with red straps on his back. He was alone. He usually left alone because he lived closest of all the others in his class. Others either waited for parents at the gate or left on the yellow school bus. He turned right, as always, walked along the sidewalk at a steady pace, hands in his jeans pockets, calm, relaxed, nothing unusual in his behavior. Didn't look back, didn't run, didn't stop. The camera recorded him for a few more seconds. Daniel walked past the school parking lot, reached the edge of the frame, and exited the field of view. This was the last image of Daniel Reed, dated August 24, 2012, 15:04:37. Susan Reed stood at the house gate at 15:05, as usual, waiting. At 15:10, she began to worry. Daniel was never more than a couple of minutes late. At 15:15, she called her husband at work. Mark said, "Wait 5 more minutes, maybe he got held up talking to a teacher." At 15:20, Susan went to meet him along the usual route, at a fast walk, almost running, reached the school, asked the guard at the gate, an elderly man named Frank. He said Daniel had left about 25 minutes ago, alone, as usual. At 15:35, Susan dialed 911. By 1600, police were on site. The area was cordoned off. House-to-house searches began. Neighbors were questioned. No one saw anything. All houses on the route and within a 3-block radius were checked. Parks, vacant lots, abandoned buildings were searched. Surveillance camera footage was requested, but they were few. It was a private sector, most houses without video surveillance systems. By evening, volunteers were involved. Hundreds of people scoured the area with flashlights late into the night. No traces, no witnesses, nothing. Daniel Reed disappeared between school and home. 10 minutes on foot, 2 blocks, 3 in the afternoon, a residential area with a low crime rate. He simply vanished. The police worked through all standard versions. They checked the parents, ironclad alibis. Mark was at work, 10 witnesses, Susan at the library until 14:45. They interviewed all teachers, classmates, neighbors, distant relatives. They checked every registered offender within 50 miles. All had alibis. The case was transferred to the FBI after 48 hours. Agent Robert Callahan took personal control, organized a federal search. They searched for a year. 2, 3, 5. Not a single trace. Not a single lead. Not a single anonymous call. Until that night of October 13th, 2019, when 14-year-old Daniel Reed himself walked into the police station. Susan Reed's 911 call was registered at 15:35. The recording was preserved in the archive. Operator: "Emergency services, what's happened?" Susan, voice trembling: "My son hasn't come home from school. He always comes at the same time. It's been 30 minutes already." The operator began standard protocol. Confirmed age, 7 years. Name, Daniel Reed. School address, home address. What he was wearing, blue t-shirt, dark jeans, gray backpack. Estimated time of disappearance, between 15:04 when he left school and 15:14 when he should have been home. 10 minutes, 2 blocks, broad daylight. A patrol car arrived at the Reed's house at 15:52. 2 officers, David Crompton and Maria Sanchez. They interviewed Susan. She showed them the usual route on a map. They drove the route, slowly, looking for anything unusual. Nothing. By 16:15, 6 patrol cars were on site. House-to-house searches began. Officers knocked on every door on Oak Street and Maple Street. Asked, "Did you see a boy in a blue t-shirt? Hear anything unusual?"
Notice any unfamiliar cars? A neighbor on Oak Street, 112, Mrs. Jennifer Holmes, 63, said she saw the school bus at 3 o'clock as usual. Nothing else. Neighbors on Maple Street, 239, the Collins family, said, "We're home all day. Heard nothing, saw nothing." No one saw anything. By 17, Detective James Porter from the Crimes Against Minors Division arrived. He took official statements from Mark and Susan Reed. They told him everything: daily routine, habits, friends, acquaintances, relatives. Porter asked, were there any threats, conflicts, strange calls, suspicious people near the house or school? No, nothing like that. He requested surveillance camera footage. There wasn't much. The school, 2 stores on the route, 1 gas station a block away. A technical specialist reviewed the footage from the last 3 hours. School camera, Daniel exits at 15:04, turns right. Grocery store camera on Oak Street, no image of Daniel. The viewing angle only captured the store entrance and only partially the sidewalk. Dry cleaner camera nearby, not working at all, broken 2 weeks ago. Gas station camera at the Oak and Maple intersection, nothing.
Daniel didn't appear in the frame. This meant one thing. He disappeared somewhere between the school and the intersection. Distance, 1 block, 150 meters. By 1830, 40 officers and 70 volunteers from the local community were involved in the search. They scoured all parks, vacant lots, abandoned buildings within a 3-kilometer radius, used flashlights, dogs, thermal imagers. Nothing. By 2200, it started to rain, heavy, cold. The search continued, but efficiency dropped. Traces, if there were any, were now washed away. At midnight, Mark and Susan Reed sat in the kitchen. In front of them were Detective Porter and FBI agent Robert Callahan. He had arrived from the regional office at 23:15 as soon as he received notification of a minor's disappearance under suspicious circumstances. Callahan explained this was now a federal case, child abduction, FBI jurisdiction. He would personally lead the investigation. Susan asked, "What next?" Callahan said, "We'll continue the search at dawn, expand the radius to 10 kilometers, interview all registered individuals with criminal records in the county, check all cars recorded by cameras in the school area. Post missing person flyers with Daniel's photo throughout the state." Mark asked, "What are the chances?" Callahan didn't answer immediately. Then he spoke honestly. "The first 48 hours are critical. If we find a lead during that time, chances are high. If not, chances drop with each passing day." 48 hours passed, then a week, then a month. No traces, no leads, no witnesses, no ransom demands, meaning it wasn't a kidnapping for money. No anonymous calls, nothing. The case remained open. Daniel's photograph hung in the Springfield police station for 7 years. Callahan kept a copy on his desk. Every year, the parents held a press conference on the anniversary of the disappearance. They asked anyone who knew anything to come forward. No one came forward. And now, 7 years later, Daniel Reed sat across from Callahan in the interrogation room. Alive, emaciated, frightened, but alive. And the FBI agent finally had a chance to find out what had happened that August day in 2012. August 26th, 2012, 3rd day of the search. The search team expanded the zone to 5 kilometers from the point of disappearance. 120 people, police officers, FBI agents, volunteers, canine units with dogs. They moved in a chain, meter by meter, scouring every area. Daniel's main route had been checked dozens of times. Now they were checking everything around it. Private yards, garages, basements with owner permission, vacant lots, an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the neighborhood, a forest park area 2 kilometers from the school. At 1440, volunteer Thomas Ames, 37, a physical education teacher from a neighboring school, found something in the bushes. Location: a side street, Elm Street, parallel to Oak Street, not on Daniel's main route, off to the side, about 200 meters from the path he usually took. Ames saw something blue in the bushes. He bent down. It was a textbook, math for 2nd grade. The cover was blue, worn, crumpled. He picked up the book. On the inside cover, a sticker with the owner's name. Standard school practice, so textbooks wouldn't get lost. Name: Daniel Reed. Ames shouted, called officers over. Detective Porter ran up. He put on gloves, examined the textbook without touching it directly.
The cover was damp. It had rained 2 days ago, but the book lay under dense bushes, partially protected from the water. Porter placed the textbook in a plastic bag, called for forensic specialists. This was the first physical evidence since the disappearance. Forensic specialists arrived 20 minutes later. Senior technician Elizabeth Chen, 12 years of experience in forensic science. She examined the crime scene, photographed it from different angles, measured distances to nearby objects, took soil samples from around it. Then she took the textbook to the lab. Agent Callahan observed the process. He understood this book could tell a lot: why it was here, 200 meters from the usual route, how it got here, who brought it here. In the lab, Chen began her work. First, a visual inspection under bright light. Traces of dirt were visible on the cover, several scratches. A corner was slightly crumpled, as if the book had fallen or been thrown. Then she treated the cover with a special powder to reveal fingerprints. Used ninhydrin, a chemical that reacts to amino acids in sweat and oil residues. Several hours later, the results were ready. On the cover, many prints. Some were smudged, unreadable, but there were 3 clear ones. Chen scanned them into the system, started a comparison. First print, Daniel Reed, confirmed by samples taken from his room. Second print, Susan Reed, his mother. Logical, she certainly handled his textbooks. Third print, an unknown person. Chen enlarged the image. The print was partial. Only 7 identification points were visible out of the 12 necessary for a 100% match, but enough for a database search. She ran a check through AFIS, the Automated Fingerprint Identification System. The database contained millions of records. Everyone who had ever been arrested, worked in government agencies, applied for certain licenses. The system ran for 2 hours. Result: no matches found. This meant the person whose print was on the textbook had never been arrested, had not worked in the police, FBI, schools, hospitals, had not served in the military, had not undergone a background check for a gun license. A clean record, or simply a person outside the system. Callahan received the report on the evening of August 27th. He studied all the data. Tried to construct a picture. The textbook was not found on the main route. This meant Daniel either turned off the path himself or he was led away. The book lay in the bushes, hidden or thrown. It had the print of an unknown person. Callahan put forward a theory. Someone intercepted Daniel on his way from school, perhaps lured him, perhaps used force. Daniel dropped or let go of the textbook. The abductor either didn't notice or didn't have time to pick up the book, threw it into the bushes, and took the boy. The theory was logical, but without the abductor's name, useless. Investigators tried to pursue all possible leads. They interviewed residents of Elm Street. No one saw anything that day. They checked cars recorded by cameras in that area between 15 and 1600. They found 17 vehicles, checked the owners. All had alibis. All were clear.
The print remained the only lead, but without a database match, it led nowhere. Callahan kept this print in the file, hoped that someday a match would be found, that the person who left this trace would make a mistake, get caught on something else, end up in the database. A month passed, a year, 3 years, 5 years. The print never found a match. The case reached a dead end. It remained open, but essentially frozen. No new leads, no new witnesses, no body, meaning Daniel couldn't even be declared deceased. Until that night, when he himself walked into the station and gave Callahan what the agent had been looking for 7 years: direct answers. August 29th, 2012, 5th day of the investigation. A call came into the hotline. A woman identifying herself as Carol Wilson, a housewife, living at 127 Oak Street. She said she saw something strange on the day the boy disappeared. The operator transferred the call to Detective Porter. He started the recording. Carol said on August 24th, around 3 in the afternoon, she was looking out her kitchen window. She saw a white van. It was driving slowly down Oak Street, very slowly. Then it stopped near the corner, where the turn to Elm Street was, the very street where the textbook was later found. Porter clarified, what kind of van? Make? License plate? Carol said she didn't remember the license plate, but the van was old, white, and had some writing on the side. Something about repairs or construction, she thought. And also, a man was driving, alone. She couldn't make out his face, but he just sat there looking towards the school. Just sat for about 3 minutes, maybe longer. Then he drove away. Porter asked, why didn't she call earlier? Carol, she didn't think it was important, thought it was a worker waiting for someone. But then she saw the news about the missing boy, and she remembered the van. Thought, what if it was connected? Porter thanked her for the call, wrote down all the details, passed the information to Agent Callahan. Callahan assigned 2 agents to follow up on this lead. They started simply, checking all white vans registered in the county, filtering by type, commercial, with writing on the side, related to construction or repairs. They found 23 matches. The agents checked each owner, interviewed them, asked for alibis for August 24th between 1400 and 1600. 19 owners provided clear alibis, confirmed with documents, receipts, witnesses. 4 could not confirm their exact whereabouts. One of them, Ray Dawson, 41, a handyman living on the outskirts of Springfield, owned a white 2004 Ford Transit van. On the side was written Dawson, minor repairs, plumbing, electrical. The agents checked his background. 2 convictions. First, 1998, shoplifting, probation. Second, 2005, assault in a bar, fight, 3 months actual prison time. Nothing serious, but he had convictions. The agents went to his home on the morning of August 30th. Ray opened the door, looked wary, asked, "What's the matter?" The agents explained they were investigating a disappearance, needed to ask a few questions, asked for an alibi for August 24. Ray thought, said he worked that day, fixed a faucet for a client, but didn't remember exactly what time, maybe in the morning, maybe in the afternoon. The agents asked for the client's name. Ray named Mrs. Garcia, lives on the other side of town. They went there, interviewed Mrs. Garcia. She confirmed Ray came on August 24, fixed the kitchen faucet, but he arrived in the morning at 9, left at 11. She was sure because she had an appointment at noon. She was watching the clock. This meant Ray was free after 11, could have been on Oak Street at 3 in the afternoon. The agents took Ray to the station for an official interrogation.
He went voluntarily, refusing would be suspicious. At the station, he was interrogated by Detective Porter in the presence of Agent Callahan. They started the recording. Porter asked directly, "Where were you on August 24 between 2 and 4 in the afternoon?" Ray spoke quickly, scared. "After work at Garcia's, I went home, had lunch, then went to the hardware store for materials, bought pipes and fittings, then went to another call to Mr. Chen, fixed a toilet, arrived there around 4. Porter: "Do you have receipts from the store?" Ray: "Probably, somewhere at home. I don't always keep them." Porter: "Were you on Oak Street near Lincoln School?" Ray: "No, never there that day." Callahan intervened. "A witness saw a white van with a repair sign on Oak Street at 3 in the afternoon. Your van is white. It has a repair sign." Ray tensed. "That wasn't me. There are tons of white vans. Half the handymen drive them." Callahan offered, "Let's check. Give your fingerprints voluntarily. If they don't match the evidence, we'll let you go." Ray agreed. He was taken to the forensic specialist. All 10 fingerprints were taken. Elizabeth Chen compared them to the print found on Daniel's textbook. No match. None of Ray's 10 fingers matched the partial print on the cover. In parallel, agents checked the alibi. They went to Mr. Chen. He confirmed Ray did come on August 24th, around 4 in the afternoon, fixed a toilet, worked until 6 in the evening. There was a receipt. They checked the hardware store, requested transaction records for August 24th, found a purchase in Ray Dawson's name, time 14:27. Bought pipes, fittings, sealant. Paid cash. Store cameras confirmed it was him. At 14:27, Ray was at the store 5 kilometers from Oak Street. At 15:04, when Daniel left school, he physically could not have been nearby. The alibi was solid. Callahan released Ray that same evening, offered formal apologies for the inconvenience. The van theory didn't work. Either the witness was wrong about the time, or saw a different van, or the van was not related to the case at all. The investigation returned to square one. 0 suspects, 1 piece of evidence, a fingerprint without a match, no working theories. September 2012 turned into October. October into November. Active searches were scaled back.
A standby mode remained, checking incoming calls, following up on rare leads. Callahan continued to handle the case. He personally checked every tip. In the first year, 117 came in. Someone saw a boy resembling Daniel in a shopping mall, someone else at a gas station 3 states away. Someone was sure they recognized him at a playground. Each time, agents went out, checked. Each time, a false alarm. In the second year, there were fewer calls, 43. In the third, 21. In the fourth, 12. People forget, not out of cruelty. That's just how time works. New cases, new tragedies. Memories fade. But the parents didn't forget. August 24th, 2013. First anniversary of the disappearance. Mark and Susan Reed organized a press conference in front of the police station. Local television came, several journalists, a small crowd of residents. Susan read a statement. Her voice trembled. She said their son was still out there somewhere. They believed he was alive. Asked anyone who knew anything to call. Promised not to ask questions. Just wanted him home. The camera filmed their faces. Mark stood beside her, holding a photo of Daniel. Susan cried. The story aired on the evening news. The next day, 3 calls came in. All 3 false. August 24th, 2014, second anniversary. Another press conference. Fewer journalists, fewer viewers. The news story was shorter, 2 minutes instead of 5. August 24, 2015, third anniversary. The press conference was canceled. Television refused to come. They said the news item was outdated. Mark and Susan stood by the station alone, held a poster with their son's photo. People walked by. Most paid no attention. In the police station archive, Daniel Reed's case filled an entire shelf, 23 folders, interrogation transcripts, expert reports, photographs, maps, lists of checked individuals, 847 people. Each one checked, each one excluded. Posters with Daniel's photo hung in the station, on information boards, at bus stops, in shopping malls. Time took its toll. The colors faded, the paper yellowed, the edges curled. Someone tore them down. Someone covered them with advertisements. In 2016, the case was officially moved to the cold category. This didn't mean it was closed. It simply acknowledged the active investigation was exhausted. All leads pursued.
All theories checked. All that remained was to wait. Wait for someone to call, or for new information to emerge, or for remains to be found. Callahan moved the folder to a separate cabinet. Other cold cases already lay there. Unsolved murders, missing persons. Some cases were 10 years old, 20. Some would never be solved. But Callahan didn't remove Daniel's photograph from his desk. He kept it next to his monitor. Every day he saw that face, a 7-year-old boy smiling at him from the photo. Every day the agent thought, where is he now? Is he alive? Is he suffering? Does he remember his parents? Is he waiting for help? Callahan made himself a promise. He would not abandon this case. He would check databases. He would monitor similar cases in other states. He would wait for some kind of breakthrough. Mark and Susan Reed continued to live, but life had changed. Daniel's room remained untouched. The bed was made, toys on the shelves, textbooks on the desk, except for the one found in the bushes. Every evening Susan went in there, sat on the edge of the bed. Sometimes she cried. Sometimes she just sat. Mark left his bank job in 2015. Couldn't cope. Depression.
Started drinking. Susan tried to keep the family together. They went to a psychologist, tried to support each other, but each anniversary reopened the wounds. By 2019, 7 years had passed. Daniel should have been 14, if he was alive, if he could even be found. By this time, Callahan had closed 23 other cases, solved crimes, imprisoned criminals, gotten promoted. But Daniel Reed's case remained his personal failure, the only one he hadn't been able to solve in his entire career. And then, on October 13th, 2019, at 5 minutes to midnight, 2 people entered the station. The duty sergeant checked the name in the database, and everything changed. 7 years of a cold case suddenly came alive. Callahan received what he hadn't hoped for, a living witness. Daniel himself, the one who could tell everything, who could name the abductor, indicate the place where he was held, explain how he survived 7 years. Daniel sat in the interrogation room, Callahan opposite him. The dictaphone was on, and the agent was ready to hear the truth. Callahan didn't start the interrogation immediately. He called in a specialist, Dr.
Emily Harris, a forensic psychologist who had worked with the Springfield police for 12 years. She specialized in cases involving juvenile witnesses and victims. She knew how to talk to those who had experienced trauma. Dr. Harris arrived at the station around 1 in the morning, entered the interrogation room, sat next to Daniel, not opposite him. This was an important detail. It removed the feeling of confrontation. She spoke softly. "Daniel, my name is Emily. I'm here to help you. You're safe. No one will hurt you. Can you tell me what happened?" Daniel looked at her, remained silent for a few seconds, then spoke quietly. "I escaped." Harris nodded. "I understand. Where did you escape from?" Daniel: "From home." Harris: "What home?" Daniel: "Where I lived, with Dad." Callahan, sitting in the corner of the room, tensed, made a note in his notebook. Mark Reed, Daniel's biological father, was on his way to the station right now. He had been called as soon as the boy was identified, but Daniel said Dad as if he meant someone else. Harris continued cautiously. "Tell me about Dad. What's his name?" Daniel: "Mark." Callahan wrote it down. The name matched the biological father, but the intonation was wrong. Daniel spoke distantly, without emotion. "Mark, is that the one who took you 7 years ago?" Daniel nodded. "And where's your mom?" Daniel: "I don't know. Dad said they abandoned me, that I wasn't needed, that only he cared about me." Callahan wrote it down verbatim. This was a classic tactic of abductors, to psychologically isolate the victim, destroy the connection to the past, replace reality. "Where did you live for these 7 years?" "Everywhere. We moved often, every few months. Sometimes we lived in trailers, sometimes in rented houses, sometimes in motels." "Why did you move?" "Dad said it was safer that way, that people were looking for me, that if they found us, they would take me away, put me in an orphanage, that it was bad there." Callahan understood. The abductor constantly changed location to avoid detection, a classic strategy. Not staying in one place for long, not attracting the attention of neighbors, not allowing the boy to establish connections with the outside world. "Did you go to school?" Daniel shook his head. "No. Dad taught me at home. Said school was dangerous, that they asked questions there, that they might find out who I was." "Did you have friends?" "No. Dad said friends were a risk, that they might tell someone, that I couldn't trust anyone." Complete isolation, a classic sign of prolonged confinement. Harris changed the subject. "Tell me about Ethan, the boy you brought with you." "Ethan appeared 2 years ago. Dad brought him, said he was my brother, that he was also abandoned by his parents, that we were a family now." Callahan made a note. 2 years ago matched the disappearance date of Ethan Collins, February 2017. Ethan was less than 3 years old then. He was 5 now. "How did you feel about Ethan?" Ethan showed emotion for the first time. His voice trembled. "Yes, he's small. He doesn't understand anything. He cried for his mom. I told him everything would be okay, that we were together." Callahan wrote down, Daniel took on the role of caregiver for Ethan. This explained why he hadn't escaped earlier. A sense of responsibility, fear of leaving the younger one alone. Harris asked, "Why did you decide to escape now?" Daniel was silent for a long time. Then he said, "Dad got strange the last few weeks. Nervous, yelling, said everything was ruined, that we had to move again. I got scared. I thought if we moved again, I wouldn't be able to escape, wouldn't be able to take Ethan." Harris said, "How did you escape?" Daniel, "Dad left for work in the morning, left us alone. Usually he locked the door from the outside, but this time he forgot, or didn't have time. I waited an hour, made sure he wouldn't come back, took Ethan's hand. We left, walked, for a long time, several hours, asked for directions, looked for a police station." Callahan clarified, "Do you remember the address you escaped from?" Daniel, "No, there was no address, a trailer in the woods, far from the city, but I can show the way. I remembered landmarks." Harris concluded the preliminary interview, left the room with Callahan. In the hallway, she spoke quietly.
Classic case of Stockholm Syndrome. He calls the abductor Dad, protects him, believes the created reality.
The abductor used psychological manipulation, destroyed the connection to the past, replaced himself with a parental figure, instilled that the biological parents abandoned him. 7 years of conditioning, from 7 years of age. Callahan understood the scale of the problem. This wasn't just an abduction, it was identity replacement, destruction of the past, creation of a new reality in the victim's mind. But there was the main thing, the name, Mark. The abductor called himself Mark. Now the police's task was to find him before he found out that Daniel and Ethan had escaped, before he disappeared forever. Callahan returned to the interrogation room. Time, 2 a.m. Daniel looked tired but held up. The agent understood. They needed to act quickly. Every minute counted. The abductor might return to the trailer, discover the disappearance, and leave forever. Callahan sat across from Daniel, spoke calmly. "I need your help. We need to find the place you escaped from. The more details you remember, the faster we'll find this person." Daniel nodded. "Callahan, you said you lived in a trailer in the woods, far from the city, but you walked to the station." "How long did you walk?"
Daniel,
"A long time. We left in the morning, around 9, maybe. Got here almost at midnight, but we walked slowly. Ethan is small. We stopped to rest. I didn't know exactly where to go. I asked people."
Callahan calculated. 15 hours on foot with stops. Considering the speed, possibly 20 to 25 kilometers in a straight line, but they surely zigzagged. "Tell me about the place. What was near the trailer?" Daniel, "Woods, lots of trees. The trailer was alone, no other houses nearby. A dirt road. Dad said that was good. No one comes, no one sees." Callahan, "What about stores? Did you go out anywhere?" Daniel, "Sometimes. Dad sent me to the store, about 3 kilometers walk down the road. He gave me money and a list. Said, buy the cheapest things, canned goods, bread, milk." Callahan tensed. "What store? Do you remember the name?" Daniel thought, closed his eyes, remembered. There was a sign, big, red. The name, Quick Stop. Exactly, Quick Stop. Callahan wrote it down. Quick Stop. That was a chain of 24-hour convenience stores, inexpensive, usually on the outskirts or along highways, dozens of them in Missouri.
Do you remember anything else about this store? What was nearby? There was a gas station nearby, and also a road sign with a highway number. I don't remember the number, but the sign was blue. Callahan left the room, called Detective Porter over. They spread out a map of the county on the table. Porter opened the database of commercial properties, typed Quick Stop, Greene County. Result, 11 stores. Callahan added a filter, near a gas station. The list shortened to 7. Porter added another filter, near a highway. 4 stores remained. Callahan looked at the map, said, Daniel said 3 kilometers walk from the trailer to the store. That means the search radius is 3 kilometers from each of these 4 quick stops. Porter opened satellite images. They studied the terrain around each store, looked for trailer parks, looked for isolated wooded areas, looked for dirt roads. First quick stop, in the north of the county. Residential areas nearby, no isolated wooded areas. Second, in the east, farms nearby, open terrain, not suitable. Third, in the west, by the highway, woods nearby. Porter zoomed in.
Saw a dirt road leading into the woods. Followed it with his gaze. Something was there in the depths, a small light-colored spot. could be a trailer. Callahan. This is it. Coordinates? Porter wrote down 37.1842 degrees north latitude, 93.3156 degrees west longitude. They returned to Daniel, showed him the satellite image on a tablet. Callahan. Could this be the place? Daniel looked, recognized the configuration of the road, nodded. Looks similar. Yes, there was a turn right here, and the road went straight, the trailer at the end. Callahan gave the coordinates to the duty officer. He contacted patrol services. A team was formed, 6 officers, 2 detectives, an FBI agent, all armed, all in bulletproof vests. Time, 0247. Objective, establish surveillance. Do not enter immediately. Check if anyone is in the trailer. If the abductor is there, apprehend him. If the trailer is empty, search it. Look for evidence. Await his return. The team deployed 10 minutes later. 3 unmarked cars, moving without sirens, without flashing lights. Callahan remained at the station, maintained radio contact with the team, listened to reports every 5 minutes. 0315, team nearing quick stop.
322 found the turn to the dirt road, driving slowly without headlights. 335, they see the trailer. Lights inside are off. Dark outside. 1 car, an old pickup, parked nearby. The team leader, Officer John Riley, reported on the radio. Object on site, vehicle present, subject possibly inside, requesting permission to approach. Callahan thought for a second, said, "Granted. Surround the perimeter, maintain silence. If the subject attempts to leave the trailer, apprehend." Officers exited their cars, silently, dispersed to positions, surrounded the trailer from 4 sides, 2 at the front door, 2 at the back, 2 on the sides. Riley gave the command, "Ready on the count of 3." And at that moment, the light turned on inside the trailer. While the team of officers prepared to storm the trailer, at the station, Dr. Emily Harris worked on the abductor's profile. She sat in Callahan's office with Daniel's interrogation notes, her own notes, and psychological literature in front of her. She typed the report. Callahan needed answers. Who was this person? What did he want? How would he react upon apprehension? Would he resist? Did he pose a threat? She wrote, "Subject, male, calls himself Mark, estimated age 35 to 50 years. Profile, classic case of savior syndrome with elements of a substitutional family structure. Motivation, the subject does not have sexual motives. Daniel's testimony contains no indications of physical or sexual abuse. The subject created the illusion of a family, called himself the father, instilled in the victims that their biological parents had abandoned them, positioned himself as the only one who cared for them. This indicates deep psychological trauma in the subject's own childhood. It is likely he himself was abandoned by parents, possibly raised in an orphanage or foster families, experienced a deficit of love and attachment. In adulthood, he attempts to compensate for this trauma by creating his own ideal family through violent means." Harris paused, reread Daniel's testimony. One fragment was especially important. Dad worked a lot, left for the whole day, sometimes for several days. She added to the report, "The subject leads a double life. On the one hand, an ordinary person who works, interacts with society, looks normal. On the other, an abductor who keeps 2 victims in isolation. This requires a high level of self-control and planning. The subject is not impulsive, acts methodically, selects victims of a specific profile, young boys, likely resembling himself in childhood.
creates a system of psychological dependence instead of physical restraint, uses manipulation, lies, isolation. Important detail. The subject allowed Daniel to go to the store. This speaks to the degree of control. He was confident that Daniel would not escape, would not tell anyone, confident that the psychological conditioning had worked. Harris moved on to predicting behavior. Upon apprehension, the subject is likely not to be physically aggressive. The personality type does not suggest a propensity for violent resistance. A reaction of disorientation and denial is more likely. The subject lives in a reality he created, where he is a caring father saving abandoned people. Arrest will shatter this reality. Expected reactions, shock. Attempts to justify actions like, I was helping them, I was giving them what they didn't have. Incomprehension as to why his actions are interpreted as a crime. Possible manifestation of a depressive reaction upon realizing the scale of his actions.
Risk of suicidal thoughts high. Psychiatric observation is recommended from the moment of apprehension. She added recommendations for interrogation. During interrogation, do not use aggressive tactics. The subject will not respond to pressure. He will shut down, withdraw. More effective, create an illusion of understanding. Let him talk. Listen. He will want to explain his motives, justify his actions. At that moment, you will get confessions. Key phrases for interrogation. You wanted to help them. You gave them what they didn't have. You cared for them. This opens dialogue. The subject will feel understood, will begin to share details. Harris concluded the report with a warning. Critically important. Check if there are other victims. The subject held Daniel for 7 years, Ethan for 2.5 years. The time gap is 4.5 years. Possibly there were others between them. Possibly there are others now in other locations. The subject constantly moved, possibly kept victims in different places. It is necessary to check all addresses where he lived for the last 10 years. Check if these locations coincide with other unsolved disappearance cases.
She printed the report, brought it to Callahan. He read it quickly, diagonally, nodded, radioed to the team leader at the trailer. Subject is unlikely to resist physically, but be prepared for an unpredictable reaction. Proceed with standard protocol. Priority, officer safety. Riley confirmed receipt. The officers at the entrance were ready. Sounds were heard inside the trailer, someone walking, opening cabinets, looking for something. Callahan understood. The abductor had discovered the disappearance. Now he was either panicking or preparing to flee. There was no time to wait. They had to act. He gave the command on the radio. Enter, now. Officer Riley kicked in the trailer door with a single ramming blow. The wood cracked. The door swung open. 4 officers burst inside, shouting, "Police! Hands up! Get on the floor!" Inside was a man, in his early 40s, medium height, dark hair, stubble on his face, dressed in work clothes, jeans, a plaid shirt. He stood in the middle of the room with an open closet behind him. In his hands was a bag of belongings. He saw the police, dropped the bag, raised his hands, shouted, "Don't shoot! I didn't do anything!"
Officers tackled him to the floor, handcuffed him, searched him quickly. No weapon. Riley reported on the radio. Subject apprehended, no resistance, searching premises. Callahan listened at the station, asked, "Identity established?" Riley checked the detainee's pockets, found a driver's license, read aloud, "Thomas Edwards, 43 years old." Callahan frowned. Thomas Edwards, not Mark. Riley continued, searching the trailer, 1 room combined with kitchen, small bedroom at the back, Toilet. No signs of other persons present. No personal belongings other than the detainees. Callahan understood. This was not the place, or not the person. He gave the command, "Bring him to the station, immediately." Officers raised Edwards, put him in the car, drove him to Springfield. On the way, Edwards was silent, nervous, sweating. By the time he arrived at the station, it was already 4 a.m. Edwards was led into an interrogation room, seated, handcuffs removed. Protocol for interrogating a witness, not a suspect. Callahan entered, sat opposite him, started the recording, stated the date, time, names. Callahan looked at Edwards.
Thomas, explain what you were doing in that trailer in the middle of the night. Edwards spoke quickly, frightened. I live there. I rent that trailer for 4 months now. I have a contract. I can show you. Callahan. Who do you rent from? Edwards. From the owner. His name's Mark. Mark Johnson. Callahan wrote it down. Mark Johnson. Full name. First time in the entire investigation. Callahan. Where is Mark now? Edwards. I don't know. He moved out a month ago. Said he was relocating. Offered me to stay. Rented the trailer. I pay him cash. We meet once a month. I give him the money. Callahan. Why were you packing your things at night? Edwards. I work construction, 12-hour shifts. Finished late today. Came home, decided it was time to move out. The trailer is old, cold. Started packing my things. Then you burst in. Callahan. Did you know that 2 minors lived in this trailer? Edwards shook his head. No, I swear. When I moved in, the trailer was empty. Mark said he lived here alone. I didn't see anyone. Callahan. Describe Mark. What does he look like? Edwards. White male, about 45 maybe? Tall?
185 meters, approximately. Thin. Short, dark hair, a little gray. Wears glasses. Speaks quietly. Calm. What does he do? Where does he work? Edwards thought. He said he works as a night porter in a hotel. I don't remember the name, but he said he works nights, so he sleeps during the day. I rarely saw him, only when I gave him money. Do you know where he lives now? No, but I have his phone number. We call each other when we need to meet. Give me the number. Edwards took out his phone, opened contacts, dictated the number. Callahan wrote it down. Callahan gave the number to a technical specialist at the station. He started tracking it, checked the carrier, requested owner data, requested last activity, calls, messages, cell tower locations. Results came in 20 minutes. The number was registered to a prepaid SIM card, purchased without ID, impossible to directly identify the owner. But there was data on recent activity. Last call, today, October 13th, at 23:47. Incoming call from the Riverside Inn Hotel in downtown Springfield. Duration, 3 minutes. The specialist checked the coordinates of the cell tower that served Mark's phone at the time of the call. The tower was located 2 blocks from the Riverside Inn Hotel. Callahan understood. Mark worked there, right now, night shift, from 11 in the evening to 7 in the morning. He checked the time, 04:35. Mark was still at work, 2.5 hours left until the end of his shift. Callahan picked up the phone, called the Riverside Inn Hotel. A male voice answered. Riverside Inn Hotel, night porter, how can I help you? Callahan. This is a Springfield police officer. Can you tell me the name of the night porter currently on duty? Voice. That's me. My name is Mark. Callahan muted his end, turned to Detective Porter, said quietly, He's there, right now. Porter was already dialing the patrol service, forming a new arrest team. Address, Riverside Inn Hotel, 428 Main Street, downtown Springfield. Target, Mark Johnson, suspect in the kidnapping of 2 minors. Act immediately.
While patrol cars rushed to the Riverside Inn Hotel, at the station, the technical specialist initiated a full background check on Mark Johnson. He typed the name into the database.
Waited for results. Mark Johnson. Date of birth, March 17, 1974. 45 years old. Place of birth, Kansas City, Missouri. Adult biography, clean. Not a single arrest, not a single conviction, not a single violation, not even parking tickets. Officially employed at the Riverside Inn Hotel since January 2015, 4.5 years. Before that, worked in other hotels. Always as a night porter, always single shifts. Minimal credit history, 1 bank card, no loans, no major purchases. Rents his accommodation, never owned real estate. The car registered to him, an old 2003 Ford pickup. On paper, an ordinary person, quiet, law-abiding, invisible. But Callahan knew the most dangerous criminals were precisely like this. Those who didn't attract attention, those who lived on the periphery of society, those who had no close connections, no social circle, no witnesses. Callahan gave the command, check his childhood, juvenile archives, sealed files, school records, everything you can find. The specialist requested access to sealed archives. This required a court order, but in emergency cases, during an active kidnapping investigation, access was granted immediately.
30 minutes later, the files arrived. Mark Johnson was born in Kansas City in 1974. Mother, Jennifer Johnson, 19 years old, waitress. Father, unknown, not listed on the birth certificate. For the first 3 years of his life, Mark lived with his mother. Then she disappeared, literally disappeared. In 1977, neighbors reported to social services a 3-year-old boy alone in the apartment for 3 days, crying, hungry. Social services took him. The mother was never found. The case was closed a year later, presumed she had left or died. No one knew. Mark entered the foster care system. First family, Robert and Mary Henderson, a couple in their 50s, a farm in a rural area. Mark lived there for 2 years. In 1979, he was taken back into the system. Reasons stated in the report, unsuitable living conditions. Details were sealed, but the code indicated abuse. Second family, John and Susan Miller, a city apartment. Mark lived there for a year. In 1980, he returned to the system again. Reason, incompatibility. This meant the foster parents gave him up, simply returned him. Third family, David and Linda Carter. Mark lived there for 3 years.
From 6 to 9 years old. This was the longest period. But in 1983, David Carter was arrested. Charge, abuse. Linda Carter testified against her husband. He beat the foster boy, regularly, for the slightest mistakes, for bad behavior, for reminding him of someone. Mark was taken away again. Now he was in a group home, an institution for those not taken by foster families. He lived there until he was 16. Psychologists' reports recorded quiet, withdrawn, avoids contact, attachment issues, distrusts adults. At 16, Mark left the system, legally became independent, rented a room, worked construction, then washed dishes in restaurants, then became a night porter in a cheap motel. After that, silence. 25 years of a quiet, unremarkable life. Work, rented accommodation, no friends, no relationships, no traces. Until 2012, until the moment he kidnapped 7-year-old Daniel Reed. Callahan read these files, saw the whole picture. Mark Johnson, a victim of the system, abandoned by his mother, passed between families like an object, beaten, rejected, never had a real home, never knew what love or care was, and now he was reproducing this trauma.
but in an inverted form. He became what he never had, a father. Took those who reminded him of his younger self, young boys, vulnerable, lost. Created a family for them, told them their biological parents had abandoned them because he himself had been abandoned. Dr. Harris's psychological profile proved accurate. Mark is not a monster in the classic sense. He is a deeply traumatized man who tries to heal himself through control over others. He attempts to create an ideal childhood he never had, but he does so through crime. Callahan closes the file. He looks at his watch. 05:10. The tactical team should be at the hotel in a few minutes. They will now arrest Mark Johnson, close the case opened 7 years ago, return Daniel Reed to his parents, save Ethan Collins. But Callahan understands this is not the end of the story. It's only the beginning of a long process, interrogations, searches, checks. They need to find out if there were more victims. They need to check all the places Mark lived in recent years. They need to find everyone he might have abducted. And most importantly, they need to understand how to prevent the emergence of the next Mark Johnson.
How to help those who went through a similar childhood not to turn into abductors. 5:18. 3 patrol cars stop at the Riverside Inn Hotel. 6 officers exit. 2 remain outside, blocking the exits. 4 enter the lobby. A man sits behind the reception desk. Tall, thin, dark hair with gray, thin-rimmed glasses. He is typing something on the computer. He looks up, sees the police, freezes. Detective Porter approaches the desk. A body camera on his chest records everything. Porter says, "Mark Johnson?" The man nods slowly. His voice is quiet. "Yes, that's me." Porter, "You are under arrest for kidnapping." Hands on the counter. Slowly. Mark does not resist. He places his hands on the counter, looks at the detective. There is no fear in his eyes, only confusion, disbelief. Officers walk around the counter, handcuff him. Mark asks quietly, "What's happening? I didn't do anything." Porter, "You'll have a chance to explain at the station." Mark is led out of the hotel, placed in a car, driven to Springfield Police Station. He remains silent on the way, looks out the window. His face is calm, too calm. 5:50. Mark is led into the interrogation room.
The same one where Daniel had sat a few hours earlier. Mark is seated on a chair. Handcuffs are removed. He is left alone for 10 minutes, a standard tactic, to give the person time to think, to get nervous. But when Callahan enters the room, Mark is sitting calmly. His hands are folded on the table. His breathing is steady. He looks at the agent without emotion. Callahan sits opposite him, turns on the voice recorder, states the date, time, names of those present, reads the Miranda rights, the right to remain silent, the right to an attorney. Mark listens, signs the waiver of attorney form, says, "I have nothing to hide." Callahan places a photograph on the table, a school photo of Daniel Reed, a 7-year-old boy smiling at the camera. Callahan, "Do you know this person?" Mark looks at the photo, nods. His voice is quiet but firm. "Yes, he's my son." "Your son?" "Yes." "What's his name?" "Daniel." "Daniel Johnson?" Mark nods. "Yes." Callahan pulls out a second document, places it on the table next to the photograph. It's a birth certificate, printed on an official Missouri state form. Name, Daniel Johnson.
Date of birth, July 12th, 2005. Father's name, Mark Johnson. Mother's name, not specified. Mark points to the document. Here, see? He's my son. I'm his father. Callahan examines the certificate. It's fake. A high-quality forgery. Correct paper, correct seals, but the document number does not exist in the database. Callahan had already checked this. Where is Daniel's mother? She left when he was 2, abandoned us. I raised him alone. Where have you lived all these years? We moved around. I work wherever I can find it. Night porter, that kind of job. Sometimes a month here, a month there. Daniel and I got used to it. What about Ethan? Who is Ethan? My second son. His mother also abandoned him. I took him in, gave him a home, a family. Callahan places a third document on the table. Daniel Reed's real birth certificate. Date of birth, July 12, 2005. Matches. Father's name, Mark Reed. Mother's name, Susan Reed. This is the real birth certificate. Daniel Reed, not Johnson. Reed. His parents are Mark and Susan Reed. They are alive. They have been looking for him for 7 years. Mark looks at the document.
Shakes his head. Those aren't his parents. Those are the people who abandoned him. They didn't care for him. I found him. He was alone. I saved him. Callahan, you didn't find him. You abducted him on August 24th, 2012, on Elm Street, 2 blocks from school. He was 7 years old. Mark continues to shake his head. No, he was abandoned. I saw him. He was crying. No one was around. I approached, asked where his parents were. He said he didn't know. I took him, gave him a home. Callahan, Daniel Reed was on his way home. His mother was waiting for him. You took him by force. No, he came with me voluntarily. I didn't force him. He was 7 years old. He couldn't give consent. I saved him. I gave him what he didn't have: stability, care, love. Callahan understands. Mark is completely immersed in the reality he created. He genuinely believes his version, believes he saved these boys, that their biological parents abandoned them. Callahan changes tactics, speaks more gently. Mark, I understand. You wanted to help. You wanted to give them a home, but the law sees it differently.
You took them without their parents' permission. That's a crime. Mark looks at Callahan, shows emotion for the first time. His voice trembles. I'm not a criminal. I'm a father. I cared for them, fed them, taught them, protected them. Is that a crime? Callahan, their parents didn't abandon them. They searched for 7 years every day. If they really loved them, they wouldn't have lost them. Callahan understands. Words won't convince him. Mark lives in an illusion. It can only be shattered by irrefutable evidence. Physical evidence, DNA tests, Daniel's testimony, a meeting with his real parents. Callahan ends the initial interrogation. Mark is taken to a cell. A psychological evaluation is scheduled. Fingerprints are taken to compare with the single print on Daniel's textbook found 7 years ago. The results arrive 2 hours later. 100% match. Mark Johnson is the man who touched Daniel's textbook on the day of the abduction. Now the investigation has everything: a witness, confessions, physical evidence. The case is closed, but the main question remains. How many more victims? Callahan stands in the forensics lab.
In front of him is senior technician Elizabeth Chen. On the table are 2 sets of fingerprints. The first set, the partial print from Daniel Reed's textbook, found on August 26, 2012,
kept in the case for 7 years. For 7 years, they searched for a match in databases, unsuccessfully. The second set, fresh fingerprints of Mark Johnson, taken an hour ago after his arrest, all 10 fingers, clear, complete. Chen places both samples under the scanner, uploads the images to the AFIS comparison software. The system analyzes the papillary patterns, whorls, loops, arches. It looks for identification points, places where lines branch, end, intersect. For legal proof, a minimum of 12 matching points is needed. The more, the better. Callahan looks at the screen. The system is working, overlaying one print on another, highlighting matching points with red markers. 1 point, 2, 5, 10. Chen says quietly, "It's processing. The partial print complicates the work, but if it's him, the system will find it." Callahan is silent. He knows this moment is crucial. Mark denies the abduction, believes his version, that he saved the boys, that he is the real father.
Daniel's testimony is strong, but the defense can argue that a traumatized 7-year-old boy confuses events. The fake birth certificate is evidence, but insufficient for a kidnapping charge. The fingerprint is different. A fingerprint doesn't lie. A fingerprint places Mark at the crime scene at the time of the crime, on Elm Street where the textbook was found, on the day of the disappearance. No double interpretation, no excuses. The system continues working. 15 matching points, 20. Chen magnifies the image, shows Callahan. "Look, this loop, see the branching? Identical in both samples. This arch, the end point of the line, identical. 25 points, 30. The system completes the analysis. The result appears on the screen. Match found, probability 99.97%, number of identification points 34. Chen prints the report, signs it, hands it to Callahan, states officially, "The fingerprint found on Daniel Reed's textbook on August 26, 2012 belongs to Mark Johnson, 100% match, no doubt." Callahan takes the report. This is what he needed. Physical evidence, irrefutable, linking Mark to the crime scene. He returns to the interrogation room.
Mark is still there, sitting calmly, waiting. Callahan sits opposite him, places the report on the table, says, "7 years ago, we found Daniel's textbook on Elm Street, 200 meters from his usual route. There was a fingerprint on the textbook, not Daniel's, not his parents', a stranger's." Mark looks at the report, remains silent. Callahan, "We just compared that print to yours. A match. 34 identification points. You touched that textbook, that day, in that place." Mark is silent for several seconds. Then he says quietly, I don't remember." Callahan, "You said you found Daniel when he was abandoned, that he went with you voluntarily. But the textbook was in the bushes, dropped. Daniel dropped it. He tried to resist. You grabbed him, took him by force." Mark shakes his head. "No, that's not true. I just wanted to help." "Your fingerprints prove otherwise. You were there at the time of the abduction. That's a fact." Mark looks at the table. For the first time, his confidence cracks. He understands. The reality he created is crumbling. Facts are stronger than illusions. Callahan gives him time, waits.
He knows. Now Mark will either confess completely or shut down forever. Mark lifts his head, speaks slowly with difficulty. "I saw him. He was walking alone. I thought I could give him a better life. I approached, spoke to him. He got scared, tried to run away, dropped his backpack. I took his hand, led him away. He cried, but then he got used to it. I was a good father. I gave him a home. The first confession, partial but sufficient. Callahan records every word. Now the investigation has everything: victim's testimony, physical evidence, suspect's confession. The Daniel Reed case, opened 7 years ago, is finally closed. Callahan gives Mark a few minutes, allows him to collect his thoughts, then says calmly, "Tell me everything, from the very beginning, how it happened." Mark looks at the fingerprint report. He understands. Denial is useless. The evidence is there. He begins to speak, slowly, quietly, but in detail. I had seen him before, a few weeks before that day. He walked past my house on the same route, every day at 3 o'clock, always alone. I thought, why do his parents let him go alone? 7 years old. It's dangerous.
Something could happen. Callahan listens, takes notes, does not interrupt. Mark continues. On August 24, I wasn't working. I was home, looking out the window. I saw him again. He was walking as usual, alone, backpack on his back. I went out, approached him, said hello. He stopped, looked at me warily. I asked, "Where are your parents?" He said, "At home." I asked, "Do they know you're walking alone?" He nodded. Mark pauses, then continues. I offered him a ride, said I had my car nearby, that it was safer. He refused, said his mom forbade him from getting into strangers' cars. Smart, well raised, but I thought, if he's so smart, why is he walking alone? Callahan sees Mark's logic, twisted, justifying. He had convinced himself he was acting correctly. Mark, I took his hand, said, "Come on, I'll take you home." He got scared, tried to pull away, dropped his backpack. A textbook fell out. I picked up the backpack, but didn't notice the textbook. I led him to the car. He was crying, screaming. I said, "Don't be afraid. Everything will be all right. I won't hurt you." I just put him in the car, drove away. Callahan, where did you go? Mark, to a motel out of town.
I rented a room for a week. Cash. No ID. Kept him there. For the first few days he cried, asked to be let go, asked to call his mom. I told him, "Your mom doesn't want you. She let you go alone. If she loved you, she wouldn't have." I repeated this every day, over and over. Callahan understands this is a classic manipulation technique to break the connection with the past, to instill a new reality. A 7-year-old boy could not resist psychologically. Mark. After a week, I saw the news. His parents were looking. The police were looking. I realized I needed to leave. Bought a trailer, old, cheap, moved to another county, then to another state, changed locations every few months, taught him at home, told him the world was dangerous, that only I could protect him. He believed it. After a year, he stopped asking about his parents. After 2 years, he started calling me Dad. And Ethan? How did you take Ethan? 2017, February, shopping mall parking lot. I saw a woman. She was talking on the phone. A small boy was standing nearby, 2.5, maybe 3 years old. She turned away. I approached, took his hand, led him away. She didn't even notice right away.
When I looked back,
She was still on the phone. Callahan, did you understand that this was a crime? Mark looks at the agent, says sincerely, No, I thought I was saving them, giving them what they didn't have, a family, stability, love. I never hit them, never yelled, fed them, dressed them, played with them. Is that a crime? Callahan, you took them without parental consent, held them by force, isolated them from the world, instilled lies. This is kidnapping, unlawful imprisonment, psychological abuse. Mark shakes his head. I was their father, better than those who abandoned them. Callahan understands. Mark does not acknowledge guilt, even now, even with evidence before his eyes. He lives in his own reality, where he is a hero, a savior, where he gave 2 boys a chance at life. A psychiatric evaluation will show Mark suffers from a delusional disorder. His perception of reality is distorted by childhood trauma. He is unable to understand that he caused harm. In his mind, he did good, but the law doesn't work that way. The law looks at facts. Mark abducted 2 minors, held them for 7 and 2.5 years respectively, used psychological manipulation.
Isolated them from their families. Callahan concludes the interrogation. Mark is officially charged with 2 counts of kidnapping, 2 counts of unlawful imprisonment, and 2 counts of cruelty. In total, life imprisonment without parole. The case is handed over to the prosecutor. A court date is set. Mark is transferred to pretrial detention. Psychiatric observation is ordered. The risk of self-harm is high. And Daniel and Ethan face a long road to recovery. Investigators return to Daniel. They need to reconstruct the picture of that day, August 24th, 2012. Exactly what happened. How Mark managed to take a 7-year-old boy in broad daylight in a residential area. Daniel sits in the same room. Dr. Harris is beside him. Callahan asks questions carefully. He doesn't pressure him, gives him time to remember. Daniel, try to remember that day, when you were walking home from school. What happened? Daniel closes his eyes. 7 years ago. He was 7. Now he's 14. The memory is blurry, but some fragments remain. I was walking as usual, down Oak Street, carrying my backpack. The textbooks were heavy. I was thinking about homework.
When did he see Mark? He came out of a house, or a car, I don't remember exactly. He approached me, smiled, looked normal, not scary. What did he say? He asked if I'd seen a puppy, said he'd lost a puppy, small, brown, asked me to help look for it. Classic abductor tactic. A plea for help, appeals to kindness. 7-year-olds are trusting. They want to help. I said I hadn't seen it. He asked me to go with him, to look in the alley. Said the puppy might have run there. I agreed. We turned off Oak Street onto Elm. There it is, Elm Street, where the textbook was later found. We walked down Elm. He pointed in different directions, said maybe there, maybe here. Then he said, let's check behind those bushes. I went over, started looking. There was no puppy. What happened next? He said something strange. He said, your parents asked me to pick you up. Something happened at home. Urgent. We need to go. I got scared. Asked, what happened? He didn't answer. He just took my hand, tightly. Led me to the car. Did you resist? Yes. I pulled back.
Tried to break free. My backpack fell. The textbooks scattered. He picked up the backpack, but one textbook stayed behind. I was screaming. He covered my mouth with his hand, said quietly, don't scream. It's okay. I won't hurt you. Just let's go. Your parents are waiting. Mark did not use brute force, did not hit him, did not threaten with a weapon, just physically stronger. An adult man against a 7-year-old. The difference in height,
weight, strength, made resistance useless. Daniel. He put me in the car, an old pickup truck, gray or white, I don't remember. Closed the door, got behind the wheel, drove away. I cried, asked him to stop. He kept repeating, "Everything will be fine. I'm taking you to a safe place." Callahan compares this with Mark's testimony. The versions match. Mark used deception, first the puppy, then the story about the parents. Daniel believed it, went voluntarily. When he realized the deception, it was too late. Mark held him physically. No weapon, no threats of violence, only manipulation. A classic scheme used by kidnappers. They know 7-year-olds are trusting, raised to help adults, believe that adults don't lie.
Callahan reconstructs the chronology. 1504, Daniel leaves school. Camera records. 1505 to 1506, he walks down Oak Street, meets Mark. 1507 to 1509, conversation about the puppy. Daniel agrees to help. They turn onto Elm Street. 1510, Mark changes the story, talks about parents, grabs Daniel. Daniel resists, drops his backpack. 1511, Mark puts Daniel in the car, drives away. 1515, Susan Reed starts to worry. Daniel hasn't come home. 6 minutes, only 6 minutes between leaving school and the abduction, in a residential area, in broad daylight. No one saw. No one heard a scream, or they heard but didn't pay attention. Callahan understands. Mark planned this. He observed Daniel for several weeks, knew the route, knew the time, chose a stretch of road without cameras, without witnesses, prepared the puppy story. It almost always works. The reconstruction is complete. The mechanism of the crime is clear. Mark did not use brute force in the initial stage. He used what works better: trust, deception, manipulation. By the time Daniel realized what was happening, it was too late. The same scheme with Ethan. Shopping mall parking lot. Mother distracted. Mark approached.
Took his hand. Led him away. Ethan was less than 3. He didn't understand what was happening, didn't resist, just went with the adult. 2 abductions, 1 method, 0 physical violence at the moment of capture, only deception and speed. March 2020, 5 months after Mark Johnson's arrest. Springfield District Court. The case is set for hearing. The prosecutor is Jennifer Thomas, 42 years old, 20 years of experience in cases against minors. The defense attorney is Robert Clark, a court-appointed lawyer. The courtroom is packed. Press, Daniel's and Ethan's parents, spectators. Everyone wants to see the end of a story that lasted 7 years. Mark sits at the defense table. He looks calm. Too calm. A psychiatric examination found him sane, capable of understanding what was happening and taking responsibility. But it noted a delusional disorder, a distorted perception of reality. Judge Margaret Wilson opens the session, reads the charges: 2 counts of kidnapping minors, 2 counts of unlawful imprisonment, psychological abuse. Maximum penalty: life imprisonment without parole. Prosecutor Thomas begins presenting evidence, methodically, consistently, without emotion.
Evidence 1. The fingerprint. Found on Daniel Reed's textbook on the day of his disappearance. Matches Mark's fingerprints. 34 identification points. 100% match. Expert Elizabeth Chen testifies under oath, confirms authenticity. Evidence 2. Daniel's testimony. A video recording of the interrogation is played in the courtroom. The 14-year-old teenager recounts how he was abducted 7 years ago, how he was kept in isolation, how he was indoctrinated that his parents abandoned him. His voice trembles, but the testimony is clear, consistent. Evidence 3. The testimony of Ethan Collins's parents. The mother describes that day in the parking lot, how she turned away for a second, how her 3-year-old son disappeared, how she searched, how she screamed his name, how she called the police. She cries in the courtroom. The jury listens in silence. Evidence 4. The fake birth certificate. A forensic expert confirms the document is forged. The paper is real. The seals are fake. The number is non-existent. Evidence 5. Dr. Harris's psychological report. She describes Stockholm Syndrome in Daniel, the consequences of prolonged isolation.
This psychological trauma that will last a lifetime explains how Mark destroyed the boy's connection to reality. Evidence 6. Mark's own confession, an audio recording of the interrogation, his voice in the courtroom. I took his hand, led him away. He cried, but then he got used to it. I was a good father. Thomas concludes the presentation of evidence, sits down. A look at the jury says, "It's all obvious." Defense attorney Clark begins his line. He does not deny the facts. He cannot. The evidence is irrefutable. He tries to explain the motives, to mitigate the sentence. Clark presents Mark's childhood, sealed archives, abandoned by his mother at 3 years old, foster families, abuse, psychological trauma, never had a real home, tried to create what he never had. Clark says, Mark Johnson is a victim of the system. He is not a monster. He is a deeply traumatized person. He sincerely believed he was helping, saving, giving a better life. Thomas rises to object, says harshly, trauma does not excuse crime. Mark Johnson stole 7 years of life from Daniel Reed, 2.5 years from Ethan Collins, destroyed 2 families, caused irreparable psychological trauma.
He understood what he was doing. He planned. He hid. This is not an impulse. This is a conscious crime. The judge addresses the jury. 12 people retire to deliberate. They return 3 hours later. The jury foreman stands, reads the verdict. On the charge of kidnapping Daniel Reed, guilty. On the charge of unlawful imprisonment of Daniel Reed, guilty. On the charge of kidnapping Ethan Collins, guilty. On the charge of unlawful imprisonment of Ethan Collins, guilty. On the charge of psychological abuse, guilty on both counts. Guilty on all counts, unanimously. Judge Wilson sets a sentencing date. A week later, Mark Johnson stands before the court again. Wilson says, Mark Johnson, you have been found guilty of serious crimes against 2 minors. Your actions caused irreparable harm, destroyed lives, deprived families of years of time together. Considering the gravity of the crimes, the lack of remorse, and the high risk of recidivism, the court sentences you to life imprisonment without parole. Mark listens without emotion. He doesn't cry. He doesn't scream. He just stands. The escort leads him out of the courtroom. The legal part is complete. Justice is achieved. Mark will spend the rest of his life in prison. But for Daniel and Ethan, this is only the beginning. The beginning of a long road to recovery. October 14th, 2019. The day after Mark Johnson's arrest. Springfield Police Station. Mark and Susan Reed enter the building. They're led to a special room. They were told, their son is here, alive. They didn't believe it. For 7 years, hope had slowly died, and now it had returned. The door opens. Daniel sits on the sofa,
14 years old. Tall. Thin. Dark circles under his eyes. 7 years ago, he was a 7-year-old boy. Now a teenager. Susan sees him. Freezes. Then runs. Hugs him. Cries. Says, "Daniel, my boy, you're home. You're finally home." Daniel does not hug back. Stands motionless. Hands at his sides. Looks at her like a stranger. Because to him, she is a stranger. For 7 years, Mark had instilled in him, these people abandoned you. They are not your family. Mark Reed approaches, tries to hug his son. Daniel recoils, says quietly, "I'm sorry. I don't remember you." The words break the parents' hearts. But Dr. Harris had warned them, this is normal. 7 years of manipulation, erased memories.
Replace them with a false reality. Recovery will take years. The Collins family experiences something similar. Ethan is returned to his parents the same day. He is 5 years old. He doesn't remember his mother, doesn't remember his father. He cries, asks to be returned to Dad, to Mark. He doesn't understand what's happening, why these strange people are taking him. Psychologists begin work immediately. Daniel and Ethan undergo intensive therapy every day, sometimes several sessions a day. Dr. Harris works with Daniel, slowly, carefully, reconstructs real memories, shows old photographs, videos, tries to awaken a connection to the past. After a month, Daniel begins to recall fragments, his room, toys, his mother's voice reading a bedtime story, his father's face, but these memories are mixed with what Mark instilled. Reality is blurred. After 3 months, Daniel calls Susan Mom for the first time in 7 years. She cries with happiness, but he still keeps his distance, doesn't hug, doesn't fully trust. After 6 months, the situation improves. Daniel begins to get used to home, to his parents, to normal life. Goes to school for the first time in 7 years. It's hard.
Classmates look at him like a celebrity. Teachers don't know how to talk to him. He's behind in the curriculum. He's learning anew. But at night, nightmares. Wakes up in a cold sweat. Sees Mark. Hears his voice. Your parents abandoned you. Even knowing the truth, part of him still believes those words. Ethan has it harder. He is younger. His memory of his parents is almost completely erased. Mark was in his life for most of his conscious time. Adaptation is slow. He is afraid of unfamiliar places, doesn't let go of his mother for a second, afraid of being taken again. Psychologists say full recovery may never come. The trauma is too deep. 7 years for Daniel, critical years of personality formation. 2.5 years for Ethan, a period when basic understanding of the world is formed. Both will need therapy for years, possibly for life. There will be problems with trust, with attachment, with relationships. The consequences of psychological captivity do not disappear with the abductor's arrest. Parents also undergo therapy. Mark and Susan Reed try to rebuild their relationship with their son.
They learn anew to be parents to a 14-year-old they haven't seen for 7 years, whom they only knew as a 7-year-old. The Collins family faces similar problems. Ethan was abducted at 3, returned at 5. He is a different person, a different personality. 2021, 2 years after liberation. Daniel is 16. He attends high school. He's doing quite well. He's even made a few friends, but he still goes to therapy twice a week, still has nightmares, still sometimes calls Mark Johnson Dad out of habit and hates himself for it. Ethan is 7. He goes to elementary school, adapts better than expected, but psychologists say the real problems will manifest later, in adolescence, when he begins to understand what happened to him. Agent Callahan visits the families sometimes, checks in on them. Daniel thanks him every time. "You saved me." Callahan answers honestly, "You saved yourself. You escaped. You brought Ethan. You're a hero." But Daniel doesn't feel like a hero. He feels like a victim. 7 years of stolen life. 7 years that can never be returned. The story of Daniel Reed and Ethan Collins is a reminder. Abduction does not end with liberation.
Physical captivity can end in seconds. Psychological captivity lasts for years. Mark Johnson is in prison for life, without parole. But Daniel and Ethan are also in their own prison, a prison of trauma, fear, broken trust. The difference is that their prison has a way out. Slow, difficult, but possible, with the help of therapy, support, family love, time. And someday, perhaps, they will be truly free.